Hi and welcome back to Real Opinions. Today I'm going to be covering Tomb Raider, which I believe comes out tomorrow in the UK. It is the film adaptation of the 2013 retelling of Lara Croft, so in some ways it's a remake of a remake, and also it's a starting again of the early 2000 Lara Croft film starring Angelina Jolie. And if I have to kind of sum it up into two sentences, I would say that it is one of the best video game films, and that it's fun but brainless. So the first statement, I'll just clarify on that, in that, you know, video games have a very bad reputation when it comes to films, and honestly I completely agree with a lot of it. I can't, off the top of my head, I can't think of one that was genuinely decent. And Tomb Raider, it comes out on top because it just doesn't miserably fail. It is, and that kind of leads me into my second point, which is that it's fun. Like, it is just a adventure romp. Like, I suppose the closest film in sense of tone and style I could link it to is The Mummy, the old ones, not the Tom Cruise one. God, it's hard having to navigate around remakes now. The Brendan Fraser ones, where it's an action adventure. It's a tiny bit dark for the kids, but you know kind of the basic plot structure, but it will go on around the world. They have a map, they have to find something, they have to do something to stop an ancient curse. That's just the gist of these films. I suppose that's the closest in tone. However, I feel like this is almost just like a knockoff Indiana Jones in a lot of ways. Like, it is really taking the style of particularly Raiders of the Lost Ark. There are a lot of similarities to that film, but it doesn't do anything as particularly well. And even when it comes to that comparison that I made with The Mummy, this film doesn't have the jokes or the charm of The Mummy. It tries to have jokes. I will admit, it tries to have jokes, but they don't fall miserably flat. Like, I never winced at any point, but when I say brainless, it's just that there is no thought put behind anything put to paper in this entire film, and because of that, like, it is just becomes a definition of a popcorn flick. Like, it satisfies you for while you're there, but then you leave and you're still hungry because it actually hasn't given you any sustenance or anything memorable at all. Like, it's fine to sit down and I normally hate the term, but switch your brain off for 90 minutes. And I'm not saying switch your brain off because, like, you have to turn off logic in order to enjoy the film. Like, it all makes sense and the plot flows fine. It's a completely competently put together film. It's just that when I say switch your brain off, I mean there's nothing except what is being shown on screen at that very moment. There's nothing else. The way that I've kind of epitomized it in my head is that in all the Tomb Raider games, a key part of that is puzzle solving. Like, you will be put into a tomb and there is a problem to solve to get into the next place, and that's obviously very video gamey. And even though it is you solving it, the reason that it becomes part of the character with Lara Croft is that you kind of tie this ingenuity and having to think things through with Lara, and so she becomes a clever character because you had to solve a smart puzzle to get progress. And there are several times in this film where Lara will be faced with a puzzle, and the situation just repeats, like 3 times, where she's just handed a puzzle and she goes, I know this, it's a puzzle, and then solves it, and that's it. Like, you don't actually find, like, they may give a description like, this is a puzzle box, and that's it, and then she does something and solves it. That's what I mean by brainless. Like, in a really good film, they would show this puzzle and they would explain how it's difficult and you'd struggle to think of a way to solve it yourself, and then she'd come up with an ingenious way to get around it. I suppose I can kind of think of a similar way in that they treat it with one-room thrillers nowadays, where they try to think of ingenious ways to get around a person being stuck or something like that, where it's clear that the writer has sat down and thought, what is a clever way that the character can get out of this situation? There is no point in this film where I think anyone sat down to think, what's a clever way to get out of the situation? They've just thought, how did the video game do it? And they've also thought, what can we actually film? And yeah, it just leaves you with like a film that you're not going to go in and say that was a waste of 90 minutes, but you're not exactly going to be thinking about it much on the way home either. You're not gonna. I didn't think that there was anything to particularly root for with Lara's character. I didn't think that there was anything to keep you tied to the continuing plot, but I never felt bored in the film, and I never thought that any part was particularly badly done. Before I forget, I will give a tiny bit of praise to Alicia Vikander, who I think on one hand portrayed Lara very well, and on another hand just wasn't enough. I know that seems like that's the theme for the entire review, but what I'm getting at is that she does this she is convincingly in pain for a lot of the film. It almost makes it sound like I have a vendetta against her or something, but it's like when Lara is hurt, she sounds hurt, and she doesn't. And I think it brought a tone of realism that otherwise would have lowered the quality of the film, and that's, I think, purely from Alicia Vikander, not from any other aspect of the film. But on the other hand, when it comes to the said attempts at witty one-liners, there's not really much of a character built from those lines or anything, and agree that it's partly due to a weak script, but even with a weak script, great actors just have a character to them and a charisma, and I never really felt that from this variation of Lara. Like, it was fun, but I think that's just due to my childhood attachment to the idea of adventure films as opposed to just action films. And I can't lie and said that I didn't enjoy it in the cinema, but at the same time, I'm not exactly going to praise it either. It's silly, it's dumb, but at least it's not as painful or dull, as boring as previous video game adaptions. It's not terrible. There you go.